Welcome to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast with your host, legendary powerlifter and strength athlete, Chad Ikes. For most, the journey of strength starts in the gym, but should inevitably expand through all aspects of life. Join us as we discuss all things strength. Now, here's your host, Chad Ikes.
Hey, all you guys and girls out there in social media land. I'm going to try something a little different today because we have Marshall Johnson back on. And this will probably be, I got a couple other episodes recorded, so there'll be different time, because there's social media time and then there's reality time in this world. But I had Marshall come back on because, first of all, I really like Marshall's social media. We both do videos that are too long, probably for Instagram, but what we have to say is fucking important, basically. I don't know if you get this, Marshall, but I get little messages that go, your video is longer than 90 seconds. Our studies show that that's optimum time. And I'm like, I don't care. I said what I wanted to say. Shut up and leave me alone. But I really like the way you do your videos because as I'm watching them, to me, it's about the process. So you're not on there going, hey, do this if this. You're like, hey, this happened and here's what we did and we tried this and we tried this. And I really like the way you explain, or at least how I interpret it, kind of the explanation of hey, here's a problem. Here's how we're going to go about solving this problem. Where a lot of people are a lot of coaches and stuff are like, hey, if this happens, do this. I go, but you're basically giving them a fish. You're not teaching them how to fish. And I happen to be watching one of your videos, and I think I responded to it or I messaged you or something, and I'm with my thoughts, because as soon as you started saying it, I'm like, oh, I have all these other ideas. And I went, fuck. Marshall, do you want to be back on again? I go, because we could talk about this in a podcast. And so how this podcast is, if you started watching when it started, it's continually changing and evolving, and I have no idea where the hell it's going to end up. But I thought, man, this would be really cool to have him back on another time, and maybe multiple times, maybe regular times, where we just talk about situations that came up with our clients and kind of what we're going to tie. I have two things I wanted to talk to him about today. And so that everybody that's out there listening, just comment, let me know if you liked it. Let me know if you think it's a good idea, and we can see what else we can do. Because I have multiple ideas. Sometimes it's hard to get on here and talk by yourself all the time. And it's I keep thinking, man, what if I could have a co-host or have people on regular, because there's people like Jim Wendler who I just love talking to. And it seems like so many ideas come out of those conversations. And I think people learn a lot from that, which is my main goal, is to teach, to help people learn. So anyway, rambling on. You posted one of the videos about, and I can't remember her name. I've met a bunch of people on your team and they're all awesome. And they're all really nice. I just suck at names. So she's a little bitty thing, but man, she's a little powerhouse. She was having problems in the bench with her elbows or her shoulders driving up, which happens to be a problem that I see all the time. In the squat, in the deadlift, and in the bench, people are always shrugging their shoulders up. So you notice this, and I've actually done posts. There's a couple different lifters who I'll repost their lifts sometimes, and I'm like, just look at their lats when they're benching. Just look at their lats and how it pulls their shoulders into depression. So you had that come up, and you did a post about how you fixed that. So I want to kind of start with how you did that, because you went about it. It was really interesting the way you went about it, because you were like, hey, we did this. I asked her, do you feel it? Do you feel this engaging? No. Okay, well, let's do this. Or a little bit. Okay, so you actually gave her a number of different things before you found the one that for her kind of activated the muscles you wanted to activate, which I thought was a good thing. That I see a lot of times people oh, well, this is going to activate. And well, yeah, it might work for some of the people. But for some of the people, maybe that's not the one that clicks for them.
Yeah, I only recently, maybe within the last year, and this is just a a benefit of being a coach, learning as you go.
Mm-hmm.
I was not really familiar that with benching or setting your shoulders for squat or setting your shoulders for deadlift, but primarily as far as pain's concerned, when benching is involved, I didn't know that a lot of your shoulder pain came from the fact that you weren't bracing, activating the proper muscles in your back. And that's kind of vague. But when I say it, like, I didn't realize how much the traps played into this. And it wasn't until this last year that I learned that there was a lower trap. I just thought the trap was those big hanging muscles on your back that went up to your ears. I didn't realize that there was a lower portion of your trap that actually plays a huge role in pulling your scaps in, and I believe down. I believe they pull them in and rotate down, and the rhomboids are the opposite. The rhomboids pull them in, but they pull them from the top down. And I think it's either one way or the other. It's either the low trap pulls the scap down and in, and the rhomboid pulls your scap up and in. But either way, they're working on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize until probably like the last year or so, because you have clients that have shoulder pain on bench and you're trying to figure it out. And one of the things to kind of activate or turn on your lower trap is to Y raises is one of them that I've learned to help activate and strengthen your lower trap. But if you just tell somebody do a Y raise or show them a video and like mimic this, if you actually watch their back, a lot of people, their upper trap does all the work. Their lower trap doesn't even turn on. And it's really hard. Like myself, I struggle sometimes just doing a Y raise with no external weight, just my hands. It takes a lot of focus for me to sit there and say, okay, your upper traps, stop it, stop shrugging up, stop. Because as soon as your arms go up, it's just like that's my traps just want to go with it. And it takes a lot of, focus and intent to keep your upper traps kind of relaxed and then using your lower trap to like kind of complete that movement. And I've always thought differently than people. I've always had the same thoughts or questions as everybody else, but I've always thought of them in different ways. And I had noticed going through this process with myself that if I focused on different things, it would elicit different responses. So if I'm trying to do a Y raise and I close my eyes and I think about, okay, I'm going to lead with my fingers. Think of your fingers initiating it and your fingers driving it through. What does that do? Okay, it helps a little bit. Okay, close your eyes. Think of your wrist. Think of leading with your wrist. And if that doesn't do anything, I was like, okay, I'm going to lead with my elbow. Think of my elbow leading the charge. And then, like with Megan, I had her take 2 lacrosse balls and I had, okay, now to squeeze those lacrosse balls as hard as you can, and then go through the motion of doing a Y raise. And for whatever reason, that is what clicked with her to get the focus off of her upper trap. And she was able to move through, the range of motion with her lower trap and her rhomboids doing the work. So that's kind of the process that we went through on that video.
Which I think there's a couple points there. The first one is like, as a coach, I mean, a coach and a lifter really are not all that different. As a lifter, you're always trying to learn and get better. Well, as a coach, when I moved more into coaching, because I started coaching when I was lifting, but I didn't really want to get paid at that point. So I coached people and did seminars and stuff and made a little bit of extra money, but I didn't want it to be my full-time job. Once I stopped competing, I'm like, okay, now I feel like I can dedicate full time to this. But anytime you start coaching, it's the same thing as lifting. Like, okay, I still want to get better and I still want to be the best coach I can. Well, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to have to learn stuff. I'm going to have to keep my mind open and not go, oh, this worked for me, so it's going to work forever. Because everybody's different. So I think it's cool how you're keeping your mind open to continually learn. And again, this goes back to you're teaching yourself to fish. You're not giving someone a fish. Because you're going, hey, here's the problem. Here's what's worked for me. Let's see what works for her. And you're continually trying to develop different things and go deeper into it, which I think is very cool. The other part of that, I think it's interesting how the idea of the thought process of like, well, hey, wait a minute. What if I think about my thumb or I think about my wrist or I think about my elbow leading it? That's kind of, haven't really heard that concept, but I like that concept just because, again, there's times, and I know Dave Tate talks about this. He goes, I'll do a video and people are like, why is he telling him that? That's not the right way. And Dave's like, I don't give a shit. Like, the right way is getting him to do the right action. How I get there doesn't matter.
There's context. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the context. So somebody goes, no, you don't really lead with your elbow. Well, maybe they're not actually leading with their elbow, but it's still getting them to do the right movement. Like, so I don't really care what I tell them as long as they do it right.
Yeah, there's no generic cue, and to think that there are generic cues, you're just leaving yourself further back in the evolution process of being a good coach or a good lifter. For example, Nate, Nate, on deadlift, he has a problem of not getting his hips through and his torso up in a fast manner. He kind of hangs out bent over the weight unless I tell him to arch up, and I don't want him to actually like arch his upper and lower back. I don't want him to like arch his back as hard as he can, but the cue arch up is what did it for him. Like when he does it, he doesn't arch his upper, he doesn't like arch his lower back. Like what, that was just the cue. So when I say arch up, that's his cue, and he immediately just transfers. You know what I mean? So if I were to yell arch up to somebody when they're deadlifting, somebody somebody listening outside, or maybe a coach on social media, be like, that's a stupid, you don't want to arch your lower back when you're like, I get that, I know, but this was the specific cue for Nate to get it in his head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if that idea, if he maintains his neutral arch, and that cue of arching is what cues him to actually drive his back, that's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and as long as he understands it, that's like, I think one thing, we all kind of understand things differently, and I feel like I'm a weirdo because I'm usually way off for what the norm is, it seems like, but like as long as they understand it and that cue helps them, I don't see what the big deal is. Like that's the goal to me.
As long as the desired process is fulfilled, what does it matter?
Yeah. And I think the one thing with this whole, I think the concept that people miss, and I try to emphasize this a lot, your shoulder blade is your shoulder. Like when people say shoulder, it's basically your humerus and your shoulder blade, because the humerus fits into the socket that is the shoulder blade. So if your back is weak and you can't stabilize and maintain the shoulder blade, then your shoulder is loose and you will hurt your shoulder. Mm-hmm. Like I think sometimes people lose that concept of like, oh, I need to do military presses and lateral raises to make my shoulder strong. It's like, yeah, those muscles are important, but if you can't stabilize the shoulder blade, your shoulders are weak. So that concept of the back is the shoulder.
That brings up something funny. I'm learning lessons all the time. And one of the lessons I repeatedly get thrown in my face is don't assume anything. Mm-hmm. Like you just said, like if you don't have the power, the structure, the integrity, the activation to keep your shoulder blades locked in, you are going to hurt your shoulder because the socket is just going to be able to move without any tension or support with it. And you'd be surprised how many people don't understand that that's any pressing movement, mm-hmm. or that's any like or squat or deadlift. But what I'm getting at is some people don't understand that's pressing. That's a pressing movement. So I've had people who have dips in their program, and they would say their shoulders hurt from dips. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting here trying to figure it out, like what angle are they doing it at? What angle are they doing it at? Are they going too far, too high? Like, and then it just kind of clicked on me. I'm like, wait, are you setting your upper back like you do on bench? And they're like, no. And I'm like, I shouldn't have assumed, but it's a pressing movement. You have to stabilize your shoulder as if you were to do bench or overhead press or incline. You still have to stabilize your shoulder. You know what I mean? Otherwise, all that extra pain and stress is going to travel up through your shoulder. That's unstable. You know what I mean?
I have, even with it's interesting because I'm fascinated by the movement patterns and how our body's supposed to move and how messed up we make that. And then there's the concept of people are like, oh, your scapular is not supposed to be locked down. Like it's not the proper way to move. I go, well, have you ever put 700 pounds in your hands and tried to bench press it? I don't need my shoulder blades moving the full range of motion under that weight. I need to lock them in. So even with my older clients, one of my main tests is I'll put something up high in the rack or something and see how they pick it up and watch how their body moves. And you'll be surprised how a lot of times the trap leads the movement. The upper trap leads the movement. I'm like, so your shoulder, you're going up high and you're putting your shoulder in a bad position. Like there really is a way it's supposed to move. And then so even my older clients, they're like, yeah, I know, shoulder blades together to press. I'm like, you're always saying that to me. And I'm like, yeah, because it's important. Like everything you need to do, even when you're going through a full range of motion and you're using your shoulder and moving your shoulder blade, you still need your serratus, you need your rhomboids, you need your mid and low traps to be strong to stabilize that scapula through the movement. But yeah, I agree. A lot of people don't seem to grasp that concept.
And what I'm hoping comes from that video with Megan is that inability to separate the upper and lower trap to stabilize your upper body.
There's a mid trap too.
Yeah. There's 4 parts to the trap. I can't name them off, but there's 4. I just read this in an anatomy book, but there's 4 parts to the trap. I can't remember what they're all called or what they do other than the top and the bottom. The mid 2 kind of do a combination of all things. But what I'm hoping comes out of this is on squat, Megan also has some trouble getting that mind muscle connection. Same thing, like getting her, her rhomboids, like everything that's supposed to be locking the shoulder blades in and down and to press shoulder blades, lats, rhomboids, lower trap, whatever. That's kind of lost in translation. So what I'm hoping is that cue that we found to where her focusing on her hands, squeezing as hard as they can in order to transfer that down. What I'm hoping is that transfers over to squat as well. And if that does, that solves 2 problems in one, you know what I mean? So that was the whole process of that. That was just an example of how I think, because when I'm trying to figure things out, it was the same thing. I would be like, okay, if I lead with the top of my hand, do I feel it better? If I lead with my wrist, if I think of my wrist, do I get a better result? And that's just how I think. And then I try to relay that onto the people that I help.
Which I think is good. You actually want to understand how it's working instead of just somebody telling you what to do and you doing it. Like it's going to sink in, and that alone is going to help you to be a better coach because you have more understanding. I actually, if there's a 4th trap, I really don't know what it is. I thought it was upper, middle, and lower. But I know sometimes things go way deeper than I go. Like, because my brain only has so much. I'm tired all the time, so I only have so much I can store. So I keep the simple parts of it. But I think another aspect to that one, my upper back is going to be the same in the bench as it is in the squat. And in the deadlift, I'm going to do everything the same, except I'm not going to scapular retract. I'm going to keep my shoulders in a neutral position, but I'm still going to depress them just like in the other lifts. And even when I military press, I'm going to do the same thing as I do in a bench. Like I want my back nice and stable so I can drive my shoulders through my back.
The shoulders with the deadlift, is that because the whole process of retracting your shoulder blades makes your arms shorter, as opposed to if you just keep them neutral, your arms are actually a lot longer and it increases your leverages?
Yes. So I still want the activation of more of my lats to actually stack my vertebrae to make it strong. My lats are a huge muscle. If I'm not using my lats in the deadlift, how much power am I giving up? How much strength am I giving up? But yeah, if you fully retract, which again could make your back a little stronger, but you're sacrificing a much longer range of motion. And that was something I learned from when we competed against the Finnish guys and the Swedish guys, who are all awesome deadlifters. They're all really good about relaxing their upper traps and letting their arms like just be ropes. So
Louis had a theory. It was because they pulled. Louis had a theory. It's because they're all lumberjacks and they all pulled logs. They all manually pulled logs out of the forest. That's why they were so good that's why their backs were so strong and they were so good at deadlifting, because they were constantly pulling and carrying these massive logs.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, they were doing it all day long. So they're going, hey, what is the most efficient way that I can actually do this?
I
And
think it's funny. That's funny because it's funny that Metal Gear was made around his frame. You know
mhm.
what I mean? So he's got really long arms and he wasn't really good at bench. And metal shirts were not good, not that good in comparison to the competition. Metal shirts weren't that great, but their squat suits and their deadlift suits, things that Ano was built to do, those were great. But it's just funny the correlation.
Well, I think
That's something I noticed.
like I noticed what I noticed is once they started branching out to different shirts, it was like, hey, okay, this first shirt is actually better for somebody like me with a barrel chest. Then they
Mhm.
came out with the Viking. I hated the Viking shirt, but the Viking
Material.
shirt worked well for the guys on my team that didn't have barrel chests, that were built more like Ano.
Mhm.
And then even with the squat suit, there was one of the squat suits he came up with. I'm like, this thing sucks for me, man. But again, my thinner guys liked it, who were built more like him.
The Ace Pro was my first. The Ace Pro was my first poly, and Jesus Christ, to break the legs in on that fucking thing, it
Yes.
was it was so hard because the legs were smaller because Ano's got smaller
Mm-hmm.
legs, so the legs were small and the hips were massive.
Yes.
And with the jack suit, they reversed that. They made the legs big and more angled, and then they made the waist a lot smaller.
Yeah. So you got to kind of consider when they made the suit, who was the suit made for? Because how you're
Yeah.
built's going to be a whole lot different. But nowadays you got them lace up suits where it's like, dude, you just tighten where you want it tight.
Mhm.
It's like a whole different. I look at some of the new gear and I'm like, would have liked to try that.
You see, I look at it, I'm like, that's way too much work. That's
I
that's the
do,
first
I
thing I
do,
think of.
I
Like, that's
do.
way too much
Yeah, but I
work.
wouldn't have did it. I would have had a handler that laced my shit up for me. So it wouldn't have been any work
Um,
for me. It's be easier to get into it and I just stand there while they do their shit.
um,
So
as far as my Instagram posts, I now treat that page as kind of like a living journal. I go on there to for myself, mental health, and just maybe because it might help somebody else. I just basically try to talk about the problems I come across that I deal with, and then the things I'm trying to do to fix them. And it's funny that we were talking about views about 10-15 minutes ago. Like, I don't post for the sake of views. I honestly don't care if my posts get any views because I've had posts where they had 10 views, but I had one person that would DM me and be like, this changed my life. That like this helped me so much. And I don't care. Like if I reach one person, I don't care about views.
mhm.
But I was watching the video we did and I was just curious. I'm just curious how many views that particular video would pull in. I just had to clarify that I on my
I was
channel
just
I
worried
go
about the
I don't do
length
it for
of it
views. Mhm.
because
But I like the longer ones because I listen to them when I'm driving to the gym. I listen to them when I'm going on my walks after I eat. I listen to them when I'm doing, laundry or the dishes or whatever. It's just, like I said, I don't listen to it in a 4 hour chunk. Like, I
yeah.
don't sit on my ass on the couch and spend 4 hours listening. No, I listen to it in
Well,
chunks.
I think it's a perspective thing where like if you think about it, you're like, hey, cool, this is 4 hours. I can get 4 episodes out of this, and when it's like, okay, dude, I got to go finish something else. Now I'm excited to hear part two. So like I can't wait till I got a little more time to finish that one.
Mhm.
So I think it's all perspective and how you look at it. But on that subject, now when I listen to your post, my brain immediately goes to what I've learned and how can I help you guys. So because this is a huge problem, I see the same problem over and over and over again, and it's interesting for me to coach it because I've gotten so good at controlling my scapula that I can do whatever the hell I want. Like
Mhm.
I can lock my scapula in and do a shoulder rock. Like I just done it for so long. And so I have some different theories that I kind of wanted to talk about. And for me, it's all about control. I want you to be able to control your rhomboids. I want you to be able to control your mid trap. I want you to be able to control your low trap. I want you to be able to control your lats. I want you to be because a lot of people can't control their lats. They know how to flare them like a bodybuilder, but they do not know how to use their lats to depress their shoulders. And for me, that's as a coach, I get frustrated because I'm like, dude, come on. Why is this? What's so hard about this? Like, just depress your goddamn shoulders, like flex your lats. So some of the things that I've done that might or might not help you or the listeners, if you're a coach, you would be surprised how a touch can affect that.
You mean like touching the muscle?
Literally touching or tapping the muscle. Like I've had people who can't fucking squeeze their rhomboids for shit. But if I spread my fingers and I stand back there and go while I'm having them thinking about flexing them, they'll flex them. And then as soon as I stop, they can't do it. And I'm like, son of a... So like I've had clients where it's like every exercise for the first 2 weeks, I got to do this. Tapping the muscles. And then it starts to click in. So I'm actually... And I kind of learned that in physical therapy way back in the day. But I think people forget that like that little bit of touch and that like physical stimulation to the muscle can actually be a huge impact on them going, oh, now I feel you tapping it. That's the muscle you want. You know, like, so somehow neurologically that seems to help a bunch. The other one is, I think it's really good to learn to control it in all different planes, but you still got to be able to control it in the plane we want. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I like, and I think I might have first learned this from Kyle up at Kabuki. I might have seen them doing this. Is it's interesting how if you give somebody resistance, they will fight it. So similar to when you see Ed Cohn standing in front of somebody when they deadlift and he pulls the bar away from them, and he's actually trying to get them to pull it into them and back into themselves. People, if you pull it out, they'll pull it into you. And I noticed this the other day because I started, because of Josh Bryan, I started doing some weighted vest stuff. And I noted with my weighted vest, 40 pounds, I kept trying to shrug. Like I have kind of, hey, Chad, just relax, man, relax. Like just let it hang there. But my body naturally would fight it. So one of the things that we started doing is we would take a couple bands and loop them under their shoulders and either find something to attach it to in the gym or have someone pull it. So when they're benching, I'm actually taking these bands and trying to pull their shoulders up into elevation, and people will fight it. Like without even thinking about it, they will fight it and depress their shoulders. And I've actually had really good results with that. And I mean, it kind of, when you're thinking about it, you're like, wait a minute, you're pulling their shoulders up to fix the problem because you want them to pull it down. And like, yeah, people will actually fight the resistance and do the opposite movement. So I've actually had pretty good results with that. One of the other ones I was doing, and I did this again because I found that people, when you have horrible control of your scaps, especially in terms of retraction and protraction, if I can just get you to hold retraction through a motion, that's going to help you because honestly, that's what I want in the bench anyway. Like I want you to hold that retraction the whole time. Like I want you retracted as hard as you can possibly retract and depression while you're unracking the bar. And then I don't want to relax till you're done. So what I did is I started taking people with heavy rows or any kind of rowing movement. I'm like, all right, first thing, go into scapular retraction. I go, now do your row, but don't release your scaps. And technically, this is not a proper movement pattern. Like generally, we want the scap to move, but I go, in a bench press, I don't. When I'm squatting, I don't, because that's a massive load. I want it stabilized. And it's the same thing with your core. You should be able to twist and move. I don't want you doing it with 800 pounds on your back. That's when I want you stable as hell. So I actually ended up talking to Cassidy, who's another, she's actually a full PT, but she does a lot of stuff up at Kabuki. And I was talking to her about it because she did a couple videos on like full, how you should actually row. And I explained to her how I look at it and do it. And she goes, no, I don't, if that works, she goes, I don't see any problem with it at all. So I'll start people holding full retraction. And what's really funny is I have guys, I wrote 315, I wrote 405. I go, yeah, but you can't do it right. And then as soon as I have them do it, they're like, holy shit, that is so fucking hard. Because I actually make them hold into retraction. And then, but after they master that and I can have them do a decent weight and hold retraction, that's when I go, okay, now I want you, once you bend over, I want you to go in full protraction, letting them scap spread as far as possible. Now I want you to retract them, then row it. Then let it down, then protract it. So you're actually starting to learn to move your scapulas and to feel what muscles are controlling it, and you get that control over it. Now it's the same thing with elevation and depression. Almost anybody you talk to, they can elevate their shoulders. Mm-hmm. I mean, we keep most of our stress in our traps. We're used to shrugging and doing this. Even when I was a little kid, my dad would ask me questions. I'd be like, I don't know. He was always making fun of me about just raising my shoulders up and saying, I don't know. And, but very few people can actually depress their shoulders. So I go, hey, this is something I can train too. This is just another exercise. So one of the things I started doing is I would put bands over a rack and I would have them stand back into it, have them put their hands at their side. Then they have to push the band down into depression. And I like to do it. I'll loop a bar through a band, like just a PVC or a dowel or something. And then they can grab the bar and then depress it and push down.
I think that was a cue that I heard Andrew Locke give if you're trying to teach somebody how to feel their lats.
Yeah.
Like that same thing, holding your and like physically just trying to push down, that turns your lats on. I never thought of it as a scapula depression thing. It just, that's something I've used. And I think it was Andrew Locke that said that if you stand there and try to push down,
yes,
you can feel your lats turn on.
Yeah. And because I'll tell people, I'll be like, all right, stand up straight. I go, now reach your shoes. Try to grab your shoes. And people are like, what? And then they try to bend over. I go, no, stand up straight and try to reach your ankles. And then they kind of start getting that. Now that can progress into a dip that is shoulder elevation and shoulder depression. So you get them in a good dip, you have them retract their scaps and get in that good strong position. Now let your shoulders up, push them down as far as you can. Let your shoulders up, push them down as far as you can. So basically, just like if you were in a push-up position and you did scapular protraction and retraction, it's the same thing. Like everybody does that exercise for their shoulders, but I never see anybody do shoulder elevation and depression in the same way. And you can start off with a like a bench dip if they're really weak at that. You can start off with a bench dip too, and then go to a regular fully dip, then a weighted dip or a banded dip, and just kind of keep progressing to strengthen those things. I think a lot of times we get caught in the trap of thinking about, all the main muscle groups and thinking about, we need to do this exercise or this exercise or this exercise. And I'm like, wait a minute, you guys don't understand how important the back is. And now you don't need to be able to do a shoulder depression with like 3,000 pounds. You don't need to be able to do a scapular retraction with all this weight, but you do need the strength to put it there and hold it there. And in terms of like a squat, you need the strength to, and this is really interesting. If you watch close with some of your lifters, especially when they're weak in the upper back, once they learn how to use their upper back, they'll start squatting at 100 pounds, at 200 pounds. You're like, man, they're locking in. They're really good. Then you start getting around 400 pounds, and all of a sudden they pick the weight up. And the weight when the weight comes down, it just spreads their shoulders out. Because they don't even have the strength to hold their shoulders in retraction with 400 pounds. And you don't have to do a bunch of weight to work those things. And here's another one too. I got all these things I was thinking about. So I think when you had your girl doing the tees, you were on a bench, right?
Yep, inclined, yep.
Okay, so now if you move that to prone on the floor.
That's how we do Locke's big shoulder, big three on the floor.
Yeah, he does. Does he do T's and Y's?
It's a T. It's no, it's T raise, and then your arms are down by your sides. One of them is palm up, and then the other one's palm down. Same. You're raising. So it's three different exercises where you're raising on the ground. And she does those. She does those in her warm ups. I do those in my warm ups, but maybe we just weren't focusing on
No,
the right
I
muscles to
like on the
work.
floor because if you have a bench, now you have all these other muscles that you can use to kind of cheat it. If
Mhm,
you're here prone on the floor and you're already out,
mhm.
you got to use just your mid back to pick that stuff up.
Yeah.
So
The lock big three is great.
so it really isolates it. And like I'm huge. Like I get so much. I'm a coach. I have to get my amusement too. So part of my amusement that I really enjoy is taking really big, strong guys and giving them exercises where they can't even do it with no weight. And like I've had such big dudes, and I'm like, dude, you can't hold your arms up in a Y. You can't do a T. You can't do 1 minute YTWAs. What the hell's your problem, man? Like it's just your arm. You can't hold your arm up. You big bitch. And it's because I've experienced that. I think the first I learned from Joe DeFranco. We did. They used to do YTWs followed with a Blackburn, which I call an angel. And like you would do 1 minute holds, and holy shit, the first time I did that, I'm like, no weight at all. I'm sweating and dying. And I'm like, holy crap, my middle back is weak as shit if I can't do this.
Yeah, the Squat University guy had Julius Maddox doing the prone on the ground T
Mm-hmm.
raises, and he could only use like 3 pound dumbbells,
Yeah.
and that's Julius Maddox.
It's humbling as shit.
Mhm.
But it really shows you how important those muscles are and how weak we let them get. I mean, how many people do you know? How many big guys do you know that actually do a full row? Most of them use a shit ton of weight. They swing the weight with their upper body, but they never fully retract their scapula. So I'm like, if you're never fully retracting your scapula, which is the position you should be in a squat and a bench, what's the point of lifting all that weight?
They're basically
To work
moving
your
their
low
weight
back?
around. They're moving their body around the weight as opposed to moving the weight with their body. They're just moving their body around the weight.
Yeah,
So they
they
jerk it up and pull it real hard, and then they drop down real quick to meet the bar, and then
yeah.
they just repeat that process.
It's very similar to when people box jump. And I'm like, you really didn't jump that high. You just pulled your knees under you.
Mm.
And so those people are rowing, and I'm like, dude, all you did is pull yourself down to the bar. You didn't row the bar up. You pulled yourself down. So what the
Mhm.
fuck's the point?
Yeah, I think something that's very valuable, and this might be why bodybuilders that come to powerlifting are very successful, is as powerlifters, we come up, all we think about is moving from A to B. That's we're just we don't think of the dozens of muscles involved to bench press. We just think I need to lower and press it up. Squat, I need to squat down, squat back up. So we have zero connection, from the infancy of our powerlifting training. We have zero connection to individual muscles. We're just all about the movement. You know what I mean? And bodybuilders already have that gift of knowing how to treat each and every muscle as its own, which might be why some of those really good bodybuilders that come to powerlifting do so well.
I think, well, I'm going to say a lot of beginning to mid-level powerlifters are that way. A lot of the really good powerlifting coaches understand this stuff.
Mhm.
But I do totally agree. And I really want to get more bodybuilders on here. I talked to Flex Lewis, and maybe when I get down to Pahrump, I'll be able to get him on here. Because
You guys are friends, though.
What's that?
You guys are actually friends, though, right?
Yeah. We don't get to talk much, but yeah. I
Yeah, but it's
went and
not like
saw
you're
him
asking
last time I was down there. I went and saw him, and I'm like, dude, come on, man. When you going to be on?
It's not like you're asking some celebrity to come on. Like you actually
No.
know
Yeah. No.
Flex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because he trained up here for a while, and I actually met him at the Arnold. But I that's one of the things I wanted to talk to them about is how they do have such great muscle control, and they know how to control each muscle. They have this great mind muscle connection, and I really think that powerlifters should have that. And you know who else usually has that? Athletes.
Mhm.
Athletes are usually pretty good even like a lot of my football players and stuff, they may not know exactly what they're doing, but they'll kind of do it right, which I think is part of when people say he's a genetic athlete. I think part of it is that they naturally know. So I can explain it to them and they're like, oh, okay. And then they hit it right away.
That is why athletes don't need as much specific bar time. I can't remember where I read this, but I've come across this with my own lifters. I have people who coincidentally are really good natural athletes.
Mm-hmm.
They can do something like conjugate, let's say, where they never have a straight bar on their back. They never do an actual squat, bench, or deadlift variation. And when it's time, it's getting closer to meet time and it's time to transition back to the bar, they pick it up like that. And then I also have lifters who are not very naturally athletic. If they go away from the straight bar for like 2 weeks, it's like they completely forgot how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like an athletic person has that amazing recall just to immediately just get right back into it.
Now,
So that's another thing to learn as a coach. You need to learn the types of lifters you have. So if you have somebody that has really poor recall, they can't run conjugate for months on end and then expect them to, when it comes to meet time, transition back to the bar and they're going to know how to do everything again.
okay, so let me ask you this. Do you think that can be trained?
I think over time, like a lot, that's not something that you're going to pick up in the first year or two. I think that's something that a seasoned power lifter over years, 4, 5, 6 years, I think that's something where the motor pattern just gets so ingrained as long as they're always doing it. I think then that affords them the opportunity to take some time away from the bar. But I think there's a whole learning process that has to take place first. I think, yes, that can be learned.
Okay, that's you actually said what I was thinking. I think it comes down to, is the coach just telling them what to do, or is the coach going, hey, you need to do this muscle. Hey, you're not flexing your mid traps. You need to work on that mind muscle connection, and teaching them to basically be an athlete. I think if the coach is doing that, then you'll find that person will be able to go away and come back from it pretty easy. But like you said, it ain't going to happen in a week or two. We're talking months to years for that to actually settle in.
When you say athlete, that's funny because I actually just picked up a new client this weekend. She's a college volleyball player.
Yeah.
And I only get her in the summertime because they have scheduled practices or whatever. And I just actually had my meeting with her yesterday, and she was talking about how her volleyball coach actually doesn't really believe in strength training, and their volleyball coach was all about conditioning. And I was like, how is this still a thought? She actually told her that she needs to lose muscle because she has too much muscle. And as she's saying this, you realize all skills fall under absolute strength. Absolute strength is at the top and all skills fall underneath it. The stronger you get, the faster you can be, the more explosive you can be, the more athletic you can be. It all starts up here. So the stronger you get, the better all this stuff is. And it just blew my mind. And I'm so looking forward to her going back to camp in August and just being so much better, and her coach being like, what'd you do? And like, I strength trained.
Yeah, but that's a tricky one, because will the coach recognize it, or are they so set in their ways that they won't even let themselves see it?
We'll find out.
So I've had this. It's funny because I've had this same thing with some of my football players, and when they go away to college, and so this is probably horrible, but like a couple of them, I go, listen, here's what you do: keep doing it the way I taught you, and when your coach comes up and goes, you need to get them knees forward and you need to sit down, just go, man, coach, that's really tough to do. I'm really trying. And then just keep doing what I told you.
I think I heard you say that I think I heard you say that on a podcast.
Just ignore what the hell they say. And then what's interesting is I've had a couple of them. I go, would you please put your coach, tell your coach who's training him, and if he doesn't know, ask him to look me up. And I go, anytime he wants to talk to me, I will talk to him. And a couple of my students are like, yeah, he said, I don't have to lift with the team anymore. He said, I can just he said, Chad's handling your strength training. That's awesome.
Oh, okay. I took that as like, well, you just don't train with us anymore. Like they were bitter about it. But no,
No, like the coach is
you
like,
meant it as they.
I can't do better than that guy's doing. So, yeah, you do what he says.
And I haven't trained athletes. Like I'm a strength training, I guess, is strength training, but I haven't trained a whole lot of athletes
Hmm.
for their sport. I'm starting to get more and more. And I understand that strength training isn't everything in sport. Sport is skill, but there has to be strength training involved. It can't just be, we're just going to strictly do conditioning and then that's it.
Look at Tiger Woods.
Mhm.
Who would have thought strength training was important in golf? He was at his prime. He was actually pretty damn strong.
It was either like 315 or 405 you could bench, something like
Yeah,
I
it
think I
was.
remember
I
hearing
think it
that.
was like high threes, and
Mhm.
he's not a big guy. Like he doesn't have a big chest. I mean, that was a long range of motion bench press. I guarantee it.
Mhm.
So, like, I think in any sport it will help. The thing is where do you want to go? Do you want your volleyball girl to weigh 300 pounds and squat 1,000? No, probably not.
No.
But there is a limit, and the stronger she gets, the better her vertical is going to get. And a girl like that, I don't see her putting on too much muscle. Like I just don't see that being the
No.
case.
She's naturally pretty muscular, but then I also told her, okay, your coach wants you to lose muscle. Her coach told her she has too much muscle, she needs to lose muscle. Well, ask your coach this. Is being explosive a big part of volleyball? Yes, it is. So the more muscle you have, the more muscle you can turn into fast twitch. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So the more muscle you have, that just means that's a bigger bank you have to turn into fast twitch muscle. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Or at least, or
S-
at least make it better.
I simply would have said, so you want my vertical jump to go down too? Is that what you
Mhm,
want? Like if I lose muscle, I lose strength.
mhm.
Strength is what allows me to be quick. It is what allows me to jump high. It allows me to hit that ball harder. So you don't want me to do any of those things. No hitting the ball harder, no jumping higher, no running faster.
Yeah, but I like it. It's a challenge because I don't play volleyball. I understand just the mechanics of it. They need strong hips. They need a strong core, a powerful core, and also a flexible core because there's twisting
Mhm.
and coming down. So there's lots of motion. So they have to have a strong core, strong core, very stable shoulders. Like you really have to
Mhm.
hammer home shoulder stability and flexibility. And that's just for me looking at it from the outside. That's just my first assessment. Like I don't necessarily know, okay, if you're spiking a volleyball, these are the most three important muscles that you need in your upper body for that. Because I'm not too far into like biomechanics and stuff, but I am reading stuff on biomechanics. Just a dumb power lifter that moves stuff from A to B, you know what I mean? But I'm learning biomechanics a lot better.
Well,
So if you were to say, okay, these two or three muscles, these are the most important when it comes to, let's say, spiking the volleyball. I would think core because you're coming down, so you're driving through with your core. But as far as what comes down, I don't know if that's like your lats coming down, but just off the top of your head, what would you throw out there? Is like, okay, these muscles, we really need to focus on these.
here's one of the first things.
Spiking a volleyball, upper body.
Just because of what we talked about earlier,
Mhm,
if you have all these muscles, but they're rooted into a base that is not stable,
mhm.
how much strength are you going to get out of them?
The stabilization, I knew that. So I was like, I know
So if her
her
back is
shoulder
not
has to be
strong
stable.
enough and she's coming down with her arm and everything's just loose,
Mhm,
it's not going to hit like she should hit. If her shoulder's
mhm,
coming up and she's slamming down,
mhm,
she's not going to get a great one. If everything's pulling down on that ball, she's going to get a great one. So,
mhm,
to me, I'm like, I want her back strong. I want her lats
mhm,
strong. And that's going to be a lot of chest and a lot of probably some bicep in there too.
mhm,
Like, I think strength training in athletes is kind of an interesting topic because, well, I'm very big on balance in life.
mhm,
Like, I think people do not understand the balance concept. Like, I'm not there to make them a power lifter, but
mhm,
I'm not there to make them a volleyball player either. I'm
mhm,
there to make them strong for their sport. So there's going to be some things that I go, hey, it's a volleyball player. Let's tweak these few things. Or, hey, it's a baseball player or a golfer or a tennis player. But basically, my job is to make them stronger everywhere.
mhm.
because I don't want to make anybody imbalanced strong. I want them strong through their whole body. So really, in the weight room, I mean, if you go look at a shot putter's program or a football player's program, like they're all pretty similar. You know, I stepped into the Highland Games doing my powerlifting training and was like an A-level thrower like that. And it was just because of my strength. Like I wasn't doing anything specific. I didn't go, oh, I'm going to be throwing, so let me change my weight training. I just went into it. So I think you can get too lost in being too specific for the sport, and you can get too lost just going, I'm just going to make them strong.
That leads me to I had another immediate thought. And this, in my mind, this was just like blasphemy, even just pondering it in my mind was just like, you're stupid. But there's never a time when she is in a full squat position, like powerlifting down to, and I'm just debating with myself, okay, do I tell her it's okay to just squat in the range of motion that she's going to be down in competition? And then after she trains that, maybe at the end of the training session, I have her do some full range squats to where she's still moving and squatting in that full range of motion, so her body is familiar with it. But as far as strength training, like, do I really just say, hey, you only need to go down this far on the court, so why don't we just squat to that depth and call it good? But I'm just it's in my head, it's blasphemy. Like letting somebody squat high, it's just don't do it.
I think here's the thing, and so now we're talking about training through a full range of motion, which we know will give you. I mean, a lot of bodybuilders are going to tell you it's that longer range of motion that's really going to give you the size. But we don't really care how big she is. We care how strong she is. Mm-hmm. And then you go, well, what if you do need to come off one leg? And then what angle are you going to be? You know, what kind of situations arise? So for me, it's always been like, if they're an athlete, I'm not freaking out if they don't squat to parallel. Mm-hmm. Do I still want them to squat through a decent range? Yes. Will I maybe have them do some plyometrics that's in a bigger range? Yeah. But I think that's one of those things where like you can, I hate the term overthink. I don't think there's such a thing as overthinking. You just didn't know when to stop. It's not really overthinking.
Potato.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's always, I don't know how I could overthink something. That's like, I can either figure it out or I can't.
Overanalyze?
Yeah, I like that term better. Mm-hmm. Like you already found the answer and you're continuing to go. Like, so I think there's a point where it's like, hey, some people are going to say this, some people are going to say this. Odds are the answer is usually the one in the middle.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's also, does the person have injuries? You know, do they have any knee issues? And so I think you're kind of looking at everything, but I don't think it's a make or break. Like, oh, she's going to suck because you didn't have her squat to parallel. Oh, she's going to be amazing because you had her squat higher. Like, it's still strength training. It's only a part. It's only a portion of everything. So I think you can kind of get too stuck on the concept of like, which one is better? And you're it's like, hey, we're talking like 1/100th or 1,000th of a difference in percentages here, and I don't know why we're even worrying about it to this extent, kind of a thing.
Yeah. And the time you spend bouncing back and forth, this is better, that's better. In the time that you're, this is exactly what I said, why I'm a control freak. I stress about things that I can't control, but while I'm not doing the things I can control, I could sit here and stress for weeks about, oh, how am I going to train her? Is this the best way? And then I'll spend a week thinking, no, this is the best way. And in that meantime, nothing has got accomplished. As opposed to if I would have just said, okay, we're trying A for 3 weeks. And if it doesn't work, it clearly wasn't A. And then we'll try B. And if B doesn't work, it was clearly somewhere in the middle. As opposed to if I just sat there and worried about it, I'm giving myself stress and nothing got happened. I'm stressing about things I can't control while I'm completely neglecting things I can control.
Yes, exactly. And I'm going to flip that into a little life situation right here. For those that don't know, I say it all the time. So I suck at technology. Like, technology frustrates the crap out of me. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to do a podcast. Well, I don't have the money really to pay anyone to do this right now. okay, so I just started doing a little research and I went, okay, good enough. Let's do it.
Learn as you
And
go.
I'll learn as I go. And as I'm going and hopefully everyone sees the fact that I start speaking a little different. I start talking a little different. I really enjoy going, hey, here's a topic, Chad. I want you to talk for an hour. Because that's kind of tough, at least for me. So I love the challenge of doing it and progressively getting better. But I didn't go, oh my God, is my podcast going to be good? Is it perfect? I went, no, let's just get started. Let's get started. Let's roll it for a little bit and then go look back and go, hey, were the results what I wanted? Were they not what I wanted? Okay, well, I know better now. So now I can adapt and keep changing over time. I think that's the situation too, where a lot of people are like, well, I'll power lift when I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
No, just go do a meet. Just go do a meet because you're always going to learn the most at the meet. So just go do it.
Louis always said, you can't be afraid to look stupid.
Yes.
You can't be afraid to look. If you are afraid to look stupid, you're never gonna work through anything. You're never gonna accomplish anything. You have to be fine with going out there and trying something. And if you fail, you fail. And if you win, you win. Either way, you learn something from either one of them. So you're learning and you're getting better. And the only way you can do that is to put yourself out there and take the risk of looking like a dumbass. But there's people out there who don't take the risk and they don't get anywhere and they don't do anything.
Well,
You know
how
what I mean?
many people do you know that mastered something without failing?
No.
And it was funny because I was watching a clip on Instagram this morning and it was I think it was Seinfeld and who else was it? And it was somebody else. And Seinfeld, and this blew my mind because I did not expect it. Seinfeld goes, "What about those skateboarders?" He goes, I watch those skateboarders and I go, those guys are going to be okay. He goes, because how many times does it take to do that trick before you learn it? He goes, how many times did they fall down? How many times did they get hurt? How many times did they just over and over and over? And I watched that clip and I thought, damn, that's genius. I like that. Because that's one sport where you're going to get beat up. And nobody just does it. The best in the world don't do it without getting hurt. Everybody gets hurt at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's basically what you said. Listen, there's a point where so I don't master it right away. I mean, I actually consider myself somewhat lucky that nothing has ever come easy for me. Because it taught me, that's just part of the damn process, man. If something ever came easy, I'd be like, I don't know what to do now.
Yeah, that's we were talking about it off air with my daughter Freya. I want her to experience hardship because that'll improve her character. But on the other side, I'm her father. I love her. I never want her to feel pain. I never want her to struggle or have hardship. I want to make her life easier than mine was. But the reason why I'm the person I am today is because I went through some really shitty things in my life, and I'm thankful for them. But does that mean I want to serve my daughter up to that shit that I went through? No, not even a little bit. So how, then you go through the whole dilemma. Okay, how do I make her tough without making her go through awful things? And that's just I think it's like a process you go along the way as a parent.
Yeah, I think you got to kind of learn, but I think it's really important to remember what made me who I am. Mm-hmm. Would I have been this way if everything was easy? Probably not.
But it's also to contradict that, my wife, Kathy, her family is fucking amazing. They are they're religious, but they're not religious. They have strong core values. They're good people. They every year they donate a percentage of their paychecks to charity. They're amazing people. And Ralph, her father, has been self-employed, lots of money, very successful, and he's done it 3 times. He'll retire, and then that lasts about 6 months, and then he'll start a new business and that will blow up. And so Kathy's not had it hard. Kathy has not seen dysfunction. She's not seen alcoholic people. She's never been hit or slapped or treated bad. She's been treated pristine. She had the ideal childhood. No hardships other than, just kind of the random shit that happens. And she's now self-employed. She's one of the most driven, confident women that I've ever met. And that took no hardship. You know what I mean? And nothing's ever enough for her. She's always trying to, she's at continuing education in Arizona right now.
Well,
Like she's always trying to make her business better.
okay, but what are we talking about? No hardship. Like school was easy
Um,
for her. She never had to study. Like she's
I
trained
guess
in powerlifting. I mean, hasn't she's had to train hard? It wasn't just easy for her, was it?
I guess when I say hardship, my mind immediately goes to like a dysfunctional family. You know what I mean? That's
Mm-hmm.
when I think of hardship. My mind goes to dysfunctional, like alcoholic family, and not having proper social skills because anxiety, depression because
Yeah.
of your childhood and shitty. That's I guess when I
So
think of that stuff. And so obviously school wasn't easy for her. She's had to study her ass off. But I guess when I say hardships, that's where my brain goes.
so
You know
that's
what I mean?
that's interesting though. A lot of times with my experience, when people are talking and things get out of whack and people aren't understanding, it's because of different definitions of a term.
Hmm.
So immediately right here, we're disagree. We have a not a disagreement, but a different understanding of what hardship is. To
Hmm.
me, hardship doesn't necessarily mean like horrible bad shit.
Hmm.
Like I don't think that you have to have horrible bad shit to be successful, but I do think you have to have struggles and you have to learn that hey, listen, things aren't always going to come easy, but you know what? If I stay tough and I stay strong and I do this, I will learn. So like for me an example is if I'm got my great nieces riding their bikes and they wreck. I'm going to go over to them and I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to be in tears. I'm not going to completely coddle them. I'm going to go, wow, did that one hurt? Are you okay? Look like, and if they go, yeah, it hurt. I'm going to go, yeah, it looked like it hurt. But you know what? Like, you got to get back on the bike. Like, you'll be okay. You just, I want to be there to be the positive, like understanding and positive, but I'm going to push them. And if they go, I don't want to get back on it, I'm going to go, no, yeah, you can. Come on, you can do this. Let's go. And to try to teach them that, hey, life's not always easy. Sometimes we're going to get hurt learning stuff, but we don't lose until we quit. You know what I'm
Yeah.
kind of saying?
Yeah. And I should also like preface that I need uh I always try to learn from my father-in-law. I need to understand how they did it because they have 5 children. 3 or 4 out of them are all self-employed, all have really successful businesses, but they never they never handed things to their children. They were financially successful, but they raised these 5 kids that were ridiculously independent. And I want to know how he did it because he taught them to be independent and to not be scared to try something. I don't know if it's because they knew that if they tried something and they failed, they would have, a strong family, they had a safety net to come back to. I don't mean that to sound bad or wrong or anything, but I wanted to emphasize that they weren't given things. Ralph and Linda just did an amazing job of provide. I don't know if it was just leading by example or encouraging them to get out and do things on their own, but they did an amazing job of teaching their kids to be self-reliant.
Well, I'm sure. My guess is, and I would love to meet them and talk to them actually now. My guess is there probably was a lot of underlying small things that happened, but just from what you said, it didn't sound like he had anything to start, but he took a chance. And then
Yeah.
he became
Hmm.
successful. And then he could have
Hmm.
stopped. He could have said, I was successful, I'm done. But what
Hmm.
does he do? He starts another business.
Hmm.
And again, it didn't sound like it just happened. It was just awesome. He started a
Hmm.
business and worked. Hey, bam, it
Hmm.
took off. And then he's like, okay, well, I'm going to retire again. And then 6 months later, he's like, nah, you know what? Let's try it again. I think that's a
Hmm.
really good example of, dude, don't ever get set in your ways and don't ever be afraid to go out there and try again. Like he didn't
Hmm.
rest on, hey, I had a successful business, I'm retired. He
Hmm.
was like, you know what? I'm going to throw it all out there and see if I can do it again.
Yeah.
So that it seems to me just having that as an example and to flip this back into lifting. I remember having a conversation with my partner, Scott, at one point, and he's
Scott
like,
Yard.
no, Scott Burgess, one of my training partners.
Oh, I thought Scott Yard immediately when you said Scott last time.
He was a little tank, that dude. Such a nice guy too. But we were talking, and Scott's like, you know what? He goes, I don't think I ever would have been as good. And he goes, part of it's because you trained me and, I was the team and everything. But he goes, I think a lot of it is I just kept seeing you and nothing stopped you. And no matter what happened, no matter how bad it was, you just kept going. Like, so he's like, I felt like, well, shit, I got to keep going. Like, Chad doesn't let anything get him down. He doesn't let anything stop him. Even when something horrible happens, he comes back. He just keeps coming. And I think that example is huge. And I think that transforms. I mean, I think actions are the best way we can help other people, is just live your life being a good person and work hard and do your stuff. Like, and people are going to see that.
Yeah, I think I sent you the meme or whatever, where just because somebody lifts it easy or just because somebody handles it well doesn't mean it's not heavy. You know what I mean? There's just some people out there who can handle a lot and still function, and there's some people out there who get a scratch and their life is over. You know what I mean? Like, and they assume just because someone's successful that they're just good at it because they're not struggling. Like, just because someone carries it well doesn't mean it's not heavy.
That's a big assumption. Like, a lot of time, I think if you're going to assume in the positive. Man, that dude made it look easy, but you know what? I'll bet he overcame a bunch of shit to do that. Like, if you're going to assume, at least assume in something that's going to be better for you. Don't assume in the negative. But a lot of times I think people don't, and then that will go back to Scott, is Scott actually saw what I was going through. Scott was right there when I was going through the suicidal stuff. He was there when I was going through the depression. He saw all that stuff, and a lot of people might look at me and not know. I don't know how they couldn't know that with as much as I talk about it, but a lot of people don't bother to look at what they did. And I think, even like Jordan. Jordan's one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Like, I don't know how anyone couldn't have at least part of their brain that goes, yes, he has to be considered. From what I hear, in high school, he wasn't that good. Like,
yeah, he didn't get he got cut from his team.
Yeah,
he got cut from his high school team.
And then you talk to his coaches and the people that worked with him, and they're like, no, this dude was relentless, man. This guy was working all the time. So he made it look easy, but he put a lot of hard work into making it look easy.
Yeah, I was just re-listening to Andrew Locke's podcast with Dave Tate, and they would talk about, I think, like the Australian strength coach or some other people who all of a sudden come into this fame, and people are like, oh, he's an overnight success. And Andrew would be like, yeah, 20 years in the making. They just see this instant success because they one of their clients now has broke through, or they have a coach that broke through, and they're like, oh, they're an overnight success. I'm like, yeah, it started 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's a lot of things. I think I hear people talk about, even if you're a carpenter or a coach or a mechanic, they're like, that job only took you half hour and you made this much money. It's like, you're not paying me for that half hour. You're paying me for the 40 years it took for me to learn how to do it in a half hour. And you're not paying me to coach you for an hour. You're paying the 25 years of experience that I have. Okay, so next I want to quickly, we're at about an hour now. I'm just trying to stay under 3.5 hours or whatever we did last time. As long as you have time. As long as you have time.
It can't go that long. Me and Freya got to go get some sushi here for supper.
Okay.
Probably about a half hour or so.
That'd be perfect. So your next post that you did that I saw, I thought was really an interesting topic, because you were talking about, since you've been building back after your injuries, you're like, hey, I've been really sore lately. Is it that I am now getting strong enough to be able to create that soreness?
Yeah, it's this internal, it's just one of those things. Every time you level up, we talked about leveling up, just to where you can start adding more difficult variations. You can start doing more things. So I call it leveling up. So you just reached the new level. Now you've got things to do. And then now at this level, I don't necessarily remember what it what it feels like when my back is good sore, or like when my quads and my hamstrings are good sore. Because to me, any sensation that I feel in my lower back still triggers me to we're fucked. We're going backwards. But any sensation, and I'm struggling with that right now, to where now that I can actually train to the capacity to where I can finally get sore, it just fucks with my mind all day long. Okay, am I going backwards, or is this just what sore feels like? And that's the thing that I'm, kind of struggling with right now.
And I thought it was interesting because my first thought was probably that I would have thought that same way at some point, first of all.
And not really, not like stupid, and not like stupid, 3 days, 4 days of soreness. I just mean just like general little sore. You know what I mean?
So that's different than I thought, than I interpreted the video, first of all.
I found every single thing that we talk about, or anything you've commented on a post of mine, we've been going different directions. We interpret things differently.
Yeah. Which I think
Yeah.
is great. I think that's awesome.
Mhm.
So my thought was more like you were talking about that soreness. Oh, okay, finally I'm working hard enough. I'm supposed to be sore.
No,
But you're talking more in like, which also is interesting too, though, because I think a lot of people run into this after injuries. There's definitely that point of, oh crap. Okay, now is this did I do too much? Did I not do enough? Is this the
Yeah.
normal muscle soreness that we feel, or did I tweak something again?
Exactly.
And now,
Yep.
funny enough, was something that we talked about when we did the podcast. We talked a little bit about how, because now I'm off on a different tangent again. We talked about how the injury usually happens through stages,
Mhm.
and then you start messing things up, and then when you start getting better, you feel like one thing, but you had messed something else up. Then you feel that. Then you feel that. So like over this
Yep.
last week, I started getting this pain in my upper middle back. And I'm
Mhm.
like, where the hell did this come from? What the fuck is going on? And I started thinking about our conversation. And I go, you know what? I'll bet a lot of my low back stuff was because I probably didn't have the flexibility in my upper back. And now that I'm actually doing more stretching and paying attention to it, like some little shit that I did to my upper back is probably now just showing itself because my lower back's actually getting better now.
Mhm.
And I thought in my head, I just saw this. I got to work back from all the stacking that I did over the years. I got to kind of go back now and heal everything up.
Mhm.
But it is interesting what's good and what's bad. And I struggle with the same thing with my low back now. Cause my recovery is fucking horrible. So like
Mhm.
I'll do something on my low back and I'm like, oh man, dude, I got through that session. Like, I only squatted 315, but it felt a whole lot better. I hinged easier today. I did straight leg deadlifts with like 250, and I'm like, oh, I feel good. And then the next day, I'm like, God damn, I'm sore, man. And it's like, is that the good sore? Or is that the bad sore? And
That's where I'm at.
it's kind of hard to tell. Um,
Because before injury, we weren't, well, I can't speak for you, but I wasn't thinking about injury. I almost felt like I was invincible. So
bulletproof.
I was not thinking of my body in terms of injury and recovery. So that didn't even come to my mind. So now that it's a part of my mental process, I don't know how to discern the two. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm going through right now.
No, that actually, I would say I'm going through kind of the same thing. I never even thought about it. Like
Hmm.
my back, I had never hurt my back. I'm like, or like it would be out or something. Like I had never really done to my back what I did.
You would
And
tweak it, but then like 4 days later, you're deadlifting again,
yeah,
or
you're
like
like,
it
big
just,
deal, whatever.
yeah. Hmm.
And then I also have the fear of like, dude, I don't want to go back to that.
Hmm.
So here's what I do. Here's what I've managed to start doing with that. I try to take myself back. What was it like at its worst? And I told you one of the things I could not pick anything up without pain.
Hmm.
Not crippling pain. And I mean, I would still go lift stone and stuff. Like I can brace good enough to get through it, but it would still hurt. So now even when I'm sore, I'm like, all right, let me throw something on the floor and pick it up. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well that didn't hurt. It's just sore. So I try to go back to things in the past that I really knew created pain. And if I'm sore, those shouldn't necessarily create pain. They should just be even a little more of my soreness.
Mhm.
So for right now, that's kind of what I'm trying to do to go, no, you're good. It's cool. You're good. Like, but I'm also trying to be where before I would be like, yeah, I'm still sore. Like that's just part of my life. I'm going to go train today. Now
Mhm.
I'm like, nah, maybe I should give it another day till it's not hardly sore at all. Then I'll train again.
And you fucking overanalyze it. You overanalyze it to death. I do this. I overanalyze it to death. You constantly think, is this a red flag or is this just being sore? And then you constantly go through, okay, I'm telling myself, okay, I'm just sore. This isn't a red flag. And then when I go to the gym and I tweak something, like you dumb motherfucker, it was a red flag. Hindsight's
Mm-hmm.
2020.
Mm-hmm.
Or you'll feel it and I'm like, okay, this is a red flag. I don't need to go. I can't do anything when I go to the gym today. So I'll go to the gym and I won't get much done. Very strenuous. And then the next day I'm like, okay, that wasn't a red flag, dumbass. But as you could always find hindsight, you can always find a way to
But
be like, okay, your body was telling you, and you didn't listen, moron. You just
here's the problem.
overanalyze.
If the next day you feel okay, you don't know that it wasn't a red flag. Maybe
Yeah.
it was a red flag, and you not doing anything is what let you get over it
Mm-hmm.
without hurting anything again. This is the hard part, is that sometimes there is no definitive answer.
Mm-hmm.
And this sucks. For my brain and my OCD, like that sucks. I hate that. I hate not having an answer. But just like anything else, we have to train our mind just like we train our body. So what you have to do is you got to start learning that, hey, the decision's made. Any more thinking that I do beyond this is pretty much a waste of energy and time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I don't you're not overthinking it. You've already decided, you just won't let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do that once I touch the bar, there's all doubt is gone. Like I tell this with my clients too. You can have uncertainty, you can have doubt, but once you decide to touch that bar, once you touch that bar, you're committed, you're in it. There's no going back. So you need to be positive that what you're doing is the right thing, because once you touch that bar, you're committed. And I say that because as far as mentality goes, if you grab that bar and you get under the weight and you're still scared, the chances of you hurting yourself or making what you were scared of a reality might come to fruition because you're thinking about it. You're anticipating that injury. But if you get up to the bar and you say to yourself, this is what I want to do. I'm going to let the chips fall where they may. I'm making this mental decision. I'm going to do this, and whatever happens, happens. And if I'm not comfortable with that, I'm not touching the bar. But as soon as I touch that bar, I've made a decision. I'm committed to this, and what happens, happens. But that does not happen unless all doubt is gone, and I've accepted the fact that I'm in it now, and there's no way out. I'm committed, and the only way to get out of it safe is to stay committed and confident and understand that it's going to go okay.
Perfect. So, how do you teach yourself to touch the bar without touching the bar?
Exactly.
You when you touch the bar, what you're doing is you're living 100% in the present.
Mm-hmm.
You're not worrying about the past. You're not worrying about
Mm-hmm.
what injuries you had. You're not worrying about the future. You're not worrying, am I going to injure myself? Am I not going to injure myself? You're really 100% living in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're not in the gym and you're like, oh man, my back today, did I fuck it up? That's where you need to stay in the present. What information do I have?
Mm-hmm.
What can I think about? Make a decision, then be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of where I said, for me, part of that is going, all right, let me throw something on the floor and pick it up. Okay, it's not screwed up like it was. So
Proving to yourself that you're fine.
I'm probably fine. It just needs to rest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, now what can I do today that won't irritate it, but let it heal? And actually, what can I do to help it heal faster? Okay, decision's done.
Mm-hmm.
That's the plan. I want to be 100% present in that moment and in my life, because all the other things they're doing is, it's actually, and if you're worried about it, all that time you're stressing about it, bam, you're in fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
Your body's not going to heal the way it is. And in all that psychoanalyzing, you could start feeling pain that isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so that's the point where you have to go, okay, listen, I thought about it. I thought the perfect amount. There's no reason to think less. There's no reason to think more. I thought the perfect amount. I made a decision. Grab the bar and move on with your day.
Yep.
Now,
That's the key.
I say that like it's so easy.
But it's just another example of how life imitates the gym. You know what I mean? And we both agree that.
And if you can do it in the gym, you can do it anywhere.
Yep.
Like, you can do, it's not like you can't do it. You have the skills to do it because you've already done it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you look at it with the right perspective to be able to do that whenever you want? And then it's training. And I actually look at myself and I look at my life as I'm always training. I'm just training to be a better person. When somebody cuts me off, I don't know why I use this one. I use this one all the time. When somebody cuts me off and I go, fuck it. You know what, Chad? Do you feel like being pissed off right now? No, I don't. Well, then that dude just cut you off. He didn't make you mad. You're making yourself mad. All he did was cut you off. Like, and in my brain would go, that's one set. That's one rep. Like, to me, that's just training. That's one more rep of me going, no, I don't want to be mad. I like being happy. So I'm going to stay happy. That's just one more training. That's just one more that's going to build me to that 1,200 pound squat.
Mm-hmm.
The more I do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah. Confidence comes from doing.
Which is very similar to competing. Like, I'm notorious for, I miss my opener or maybe miss the first two and come back and smash the third. And people are like, how do you do that? I go, because they're not tied together. I go, they're irrelevant of each other to me. Every lift is an individual moment in time. It doesn't matter what happened in the first two. What matters is this one. They're not connected. And basically, I didn't know it at the time when I used to do that, but it's living in the present. Yeah, this happened. So what? Right now is now.
It's a good way to, when I make it back to the platform, I'll think of it like that. I never thought of it like that, because if my openers were always set so low to where that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
My second attempt jump was always big, and my third attempt jump was always bigger. But that's something that I did, because if I missed my first and my second attempt for whatever reason, I generally, it was defeating to me. You know what I mean? Knowing that you do that, and then like something Chuck Vogelpohl, he did that all the time. He was notorious for missing his first two and then like adding 150 pounds and just destroying his third. And, like, I don't know if it's just it took that amount of weight to flip a switch, or if it took that amount of weight to put him in the position he needs to be in for the gear, or like yourself, like if it just took that amount of weight to put you where you needed to be, or what. It just, something clicked.
Well, I think
you needed that pressure.
There's multiple ways to look at it, but like for me, the people that open with a super light opener, that's a wasted attempt to me. Mm-hmm. Like, if I know I can do it no matter what, then why am I doing it? That's not what I'm there for. So to me, that's a wasted attempt. And then usually, I've never missed an attempt because I wasn't strong enough. Never. I've never missed a lift because I wasn't strong enough. There's always something that goes wrong, and I went, okay. Like, I just posted the one, and we might have talked about it, my 1,100 pound opener at the WPO. Highest opener of all time. Nobody knew who the hell I was. Everybody thought I was crazy. And I got loose. So what? Mm-hmm. I'm like, I got loose. Big deal. And my partner
comes. Is that the one where you dumped it?
Huh?
Is that the one where you dumped it?
No, I just missed it. I just got loose at the bottom. And Chris Weir's the dude is best handler ever. He caught me and just came back up with it.
Did you hurt yourself when you dumped it? Or is there
Uh,
more than one dump? Is there more than one dump?
well, yeah, benches or squats. I've
Squats.
I've had
No, I'm thinking
two.
squat.
I
We were
dumped
talking about squat.
I dumped 1,052 in the squat, and I dumped 1160 something.
Which one was really ugly? Like the one that was in bigger, faster, stronger?
That was the 1160 something.
Did you come out clean? Well, I
Yeah,
suppose
I strained my meat.
You value your flexibility. So I guess when you're forced when you're forced through that range of motion, I guess if you're as flexible as you are, that's beneficial.
Yeah, my
It's
1,050
forcing you into a stretch.
my 1,052. I actually came back and broke the AWPC world record. Think I broke the deadlift record and the total record
Mhm.
after crashing with 1,052. And my friend Ed Russ had done that a couple years previously, and it basically took him out of powerlifting. I did the exact same thing and finished the meet. And then with that 1,000, I don't remember if it was 1,070 or 1,060 or 1170. It was 11 something, 1170 or 1160, whatever it was.
Hit the ground.
Yeah, I take the weight all the way down. The 1,052, same thing, to the ground. And yeah, I strained my medial collateral. That was it.
And then you got Spud, who just destroyed both of his legs.
Yeah, Spud did the same thing. It looked very similar to what I did, but I walked away from mine. They didn't.
And Mark Belt did it too. I don't think he'll ever say. I don't know. I know Mark. I like Mark, but I don't know if it's just like his ego. Like he won't ever admit like something got hurt. Like he just wants to say, "I got back up and I walked away." But if you
Yeah.
followed him, like he was fucked up for a while after that. But he never actually said, "I tore this, I tore that." Like this.
Yeah, no, I after the 1,052, I felt like I had a baseball in my knee. Like I felt like there was a Super Bowl or something in there, but I finished the meet. I still broke world records. And the funny part is one of my friends that was there, he called my house like after I got home, like a few days after I got home. And my mom was there and my mom answered and she's like, no, he's at the gym. And he's like, what? What do you mean he's at the gym? She's like, yeah, he wanted to go in and squat some. He's like, are you kidding me? She's like, no, that's what he said. I didn't go lift heavy, but I'm like, yeah, I need to go get some motion in this knee. I need to keep moving. And that's all flexibility. I don't understand why people can't see the strength and flexibility. This goes back. I'm going to bring this all around here before we wrap it up. So one of the other problems I have with scapular retraction and shoulder depression, people are too goddamn tight. So they cannot get in the positions they should be in, which is the strongest position, because they're too tight. If your serratus is super tight, your serratus anterior, if your pecs are too tight, you are not going to be able to fully scapular retract. And if your traps are too tight, you're not going to be able to fully shoulder depress.
Because they're all antagonists. They're pulling up and pulling forward and down, so they're antagonists. Yeah.
So simply by the fact that you will not stretch, you cannot put yourself in the right position to lift the maximum amount of weight that you're capable of.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand why people won't stretch. Like, people just hate stretching. And another thing I did want to mention about that too, because you were right when you were talking about the rhomboids and the traps. Like the rhomboids are actually angled up a little bit, so they're actually going to pull the scap. They're going to tilt it.
It's in, and it's either
they're going to pull it in
down and in, or up and in.
Bottom down. They're going to elevate the shoulders a little bit and pull them in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this gets missed too, is the concept of you can't think of it in terms of what the one muscle does, because there's more muscles involved than one. So like, okay, if I flex my chest, I'm not going to be able to fully retract my shoulders because my chest is flexed. But if I scapular retract as far as I can, then I'm going to flex my chest to help stabilize that position even more. So I can't have just the protagonistic flexed and not have the antagonistic flexed if I want full stability. So, okay, so maybe the rhomboids, if you just do your rhomboids, it's going to elevate it. Mm-hmm. But if you pull it down with your lats, then squeeze your mid and low traps, then flex your rhomboids are actually still going to pull it together a little bit, but they're not going to be able to pull it up. So like when people go, this muscle does this, it's like, okay, yes, on its own, but how do they all interact? And I tell people this on the bench because for some reasons things get weird for me every now and then, and I have to change it. So like normally I will retract first, then depress. But sometimes that'll all just out of random, that'll start feeling really weird to me. And I'm like, I can't get locked in. So then I'll do the opposite. I'll go, you know what? I'm going to depress as hard as I can, then retract, or the opposite of whatever the hell I just said.
Yes.
So for me, those things also switch around, and it's kind of like you talk about cueing. It's like, well, maybe you're better off retracting than depressing. Or maybe somebody likes depressing then retracting, or opposite. I keep getting mixed. But you understand what I'm saying?
As long as you get, as long as you get the desired effect. What does it matter if textbooks, if textbooks say this, or the most popular Instagram coach says this, whatever. If you get the desired effect, what's the difference?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's because I basically, when I coach people, and I don't know if you've been with me times when I'm coaching, I'll be like, here's how I do it. But what's important is that you get here. If you want to do it this way or that way, I don't give two shits. I just want you in the right place at the right time. And, again, to me, that goes into the balance. Like, you can look at the joint and pick apart each muscle, but that's not really how the joint works. The joint works based on all the muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that part of the, like, there's science and there's art. And it's a combination of both. Like, I don't trust the architect as much as I trust the carpenter, because the carpenter is actually building it.
Yeah, it's I've always thought it was education and experience. I have 17 years of experience, but only a couple of years of, I've only been actively trying to study this stuff maybe like for the past year and a half, because I never needed to before, because I had all the experience necessary. Everything I did got me what I wanted to get, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And now that I'm trying to coach people, and now that I'm trying to fix my injuries and hold off my clients' injuries, I have accepted the fact that education is just as important. And if I can get the same amount of education with the same amount of experience, you just can't go wrong. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. As long as you're always evolving, you're always understanding, there's always going to be different new ways. As long as you don't get set in your ways and think that every lifter needs this blank same setup, blank slate, you're going to get into trouble. So you just always have to be evolving, always be willing to learn. I think Andrew Locke said, once you graduate, you have to give up your religion.
Yes.
So that's like, yeah, you have to, because once people graduate, in the medical field, they never once study anything past it. They're just stuck in what they've known, and they never progress. And that was why
I have a degree. This is what I was taught.
Better. Yep.
That's one of the reasons I like Andrew. I probably need to have him back on again too. I had a really good time talking to him, because he is very open-minded. And he's like, dude, just because the school taught me this, I'm now in the field with these great athletes and stuff that are doing this. And he stayed open to having all these different ideas.
Just because someone is the best shoulder rehab, the best shoulder person in the world, if they don't know anything about how that applies to powerlifting or football or baseball, if they just understand shoulder, but they don't understand how that applies to what we do in powerlifting, they're not going to be the best person for that. He has said this time and time again, like your physician should either know what you're doing or do it themselves. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's why he's so good, because he not only does he lift and he's very strong, he understands how the body moves, but then he has the education to understand how the body moves. He's able to put the two together.
And this again, I think is where, when you talk about living in the present, I think you still need to spend some time in the past and some time in the future, mostly live in the present. But this is where history repeats itself if we don't study it. Mm-hmm. there literally were times where people were, and it's probably hard for us to understand at this point because you're like, what? You thought that? I mean, there literally is times where people thought the earth was flat. There literally were times where people thought we're the center of the universe and the earth revolves around us. Like, that's what they really thought. And it made sense to everybody back then. You know, Newton came out with all his stuff. Everybody's like, oh, that's it. Here's this, here's that. And then all of a sudden Einstein comes along and goes, no, you're wrong. Like time and space are relative and the speed of light. And like, we were convinced, the world was convinced this is the way it was. So for us to ever be set, I mean, I don't want to ever be completely set on anything. And I tell people this, like when I think because I get excited, I'm an excitable person. So like when I talk about stuff and if I really think it and I believe it and it's important to me, I get kind of out there. You know, I get aggressive about it, I guess. At least that's what people tell me. And I'm like, listen, you have to understand that I always understand that I can't guarantee that I'm right or wrong. But I can sure put my thought and time and energy into it where I'm convinced that I think I have the best plan. But at the same time, I know that I can't prove it right or wrong at this point.
Yeah. That's also why I believe in Bigfoot, because up until the early 1900s, I want to say it was like the 19 teens or like the 1920s, we didn't know gorillas existed. Yeah. Gorillas were not discovered as far as the Western society. We didn't know what gorillas were until, and this is like less than 100 years ago, almost roughly, that we didn't know gorillas existed.
Look at the what was it? The coelacanth? That fish that we're like, oh, it's distinct. It's old. There isn't any of these. And like, it was 50 to 70 years ago we found one.
Yeah.
And we're like, how the hell how is that even possible?
So Bigfoot's out there somewhere.
Bigfoot could be out there. And
he's closer to you than he is. He's closer to you than he is to me.
Well, that was fun. I was watching a video with, the WWE White, the really huge guy. Damn it, why can't I remember his name? Not he was the next guy under Andre the Giant that was just huge. Was it Paul White, something like that?
The Big Show?
Yeah, the Big Show. Yeah.
Yep.
And he was talking about, he's like, hey, I'm sweating because I'm out riding my bike. You need to get out and ride. He goes, but I do try to stay on the trails because I don't want people thinking they're seeing Bigfoot or something like that. And I go, oh, that's pretty funny, actually. But yeah, like one of my favorite discussions in this world is to talk about religion. And I'm so, and I think one of the things and aliens, one of the things that fascinates me, I can't prove my side and they can't prove their side. So we can discuss it all we want. And in the end of the day, it's faith.
I was just going to say that it all comes down to your faith in it. You know what I mean?
So I think those make interesting conversations, but I'm a weirdo because one of my favorite things about strength is I know that I can never know it all. And enlightenment,
faith is
one of my goals is to reach true enlightenment, but I know that it's never going to happen. I just want to see how close I can get.
Yeah. Faith is the lubrication that eases the process of life. So
there's points. And again, living in the present, you could kind of look at that as faith. Like when you're like, God, did I tweak my back? Didn't I tweak my back? And you do your little tests and go, you know what? Everything's saying it's fine. So I need to have faith that it's fine and live in this moment. And
yep. That is an internal conversation I have a lot. I've probably said you're not fragile about 10 million times. I've just as reassuring, like you're not that fragile. You're not that fragile. I probably say it on a daily basis whenever that doubt comes in. It's like, you're not that fucking fragile. So yeah.
Cool, man. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up so you can go have some sushi and I'm gonna eat something too. It was awesome again. I think this is gonna be another great podcast. I know you got talking like this always makes me think in different planes and different areas and levels, and I love that because it makes me actually rethink what I think too, which I think is great as well. So
It helps us learn, and it helps us not only reinforce our beliefs, or it challenges our beliefs. But
mhm,
either way, talking like this, you grow. You know what I mean? And
yes.
people get to watch the process of two people growing, and they learn from that as well. So I welcome this wholeheartedly anytime you want to do it.
So that's where I'll hopefully the folks that are out here watching, like if you think it's cool, man, shoot me a comment and say do more of these, and because I would be down to like schedule some regular ones, or whenever either one of us sees a video or something, be like, hey, let's just do a podcast on. I want to do a podcast on what you did, or vice versa, or whatever, and just because it's fun just to talk about it and different ideas. And I think a lot of that comes from respect. I think we both have mutual respect for each other, even though we might not always agree with each other, which I think is cool because we can just say how we feel and there's no hard feelings.
That needs to be learned in society more than
hmm
any other time. That needs to be learned right now. Just because someone's opinion or values differ than yours, you need to be able to hear that and not lose your shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that goes back to they're not hurting your feelings. They're saying what they believe.
Yeah.
And if you're letting it hurt your feelings, that's you, and you're in control of your feelings. You can always ask a question. You can always clarify. Okay. I'm going to hit the outro.
All right. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks for listening to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast. For more information, please visit couragebarbell.com. Until next time.